I have found myself, there's that wonderful moment of liberation when you're realizing that you, even at our age, that you can still change a fingering and a bowing, that you don't have to do the one that your teenage self was told to do by your teacher at that time.
We're the teachers now.
Right. So there is, I still have that moment like, oh, I'm a grown up. I can make this decision.
It's in pencil.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to OSA Backstage. Today, Serena and I are talking to the fullest couch that the conductor suite at the Holland has ever seen. That's right, all three Brandenburg 5 soloists at the same time. Susanna Perry Gilmore, Maria Harding, and Christi Zuniga joined us to talk everything Brandenburg 5. It was fantastic to have them all together because this concerto is a group adventure. You'll hear all about it. You'll also hear a little bit about historically informed performance, margarita mix, you'll see, and why Susanna is probably never going to be allowed into the National Museum of Music History in Vermillion, South Dakota, which, I mean, we think she should be. But if you see Susanna walking around with a cat carrier for no reason, flag it. Anyways, enjoy. That was a very Velociraptor moment my cat just had. Anyways, enjoy the episode. We certainly did.
Can I snag one of these waters?
Yes. You absolutely can.
And margarita mix?
Well, so we have to do two things to start this. One is completely brand new, thanks to Christi.
Oh, that's right. You were saying margarita. I gotcha.
That's exactly
funny.
So I had no idea this existed. If you are just listening to audio, Christi brought Margaritaville Premium Margarita Drink Mix, which you can just pour in your water so you can take Jimmy Buffett with you anywhere.
Wow.
Amazing. Christi, you brought this because we had to reschedule, which was very, very sweet of you. So we're going to start this podcast by saying thank you so much for being here. Would you please introduce yourselves, and then we will get to the non-alcoholic mixing.
No judge. Right. I'm Susanna Perry Gilmore. I'm the concertmaster of the Omaha Symphony. Am I looking over there? Am I looking at
you? Can look at us, whatever you want to do.
Awesome. Yeah. That's much better. And I am the violin soloist of the trio of soloists in Brandenburg 5 coming up.
And I'm Maria Harding. I'm a longtime principal flutist of the Omaha Symphony and a soloist also for the Brandenburg.
I'm Christi Zuniga, and this is my 25th year with the Omaha Symphony as principal keyboard.
Oh, man. And you are the keyboard soloist of
the Brandenburg 5, yes.
Which is the harpsichord solo of harpsichord soloists.
It's so fun.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. Okay. Let's do this. We had pickles a couple episodes back, and now we have margarita mix. So Christi, how does this work?
So you just take this and you rip it. Ow, it ripped. Oh my goodness. I brought scissors just in case. I'm shocked that it ripped. And then you're supposed to take a sip, but I won't do that. I'll just pour a little in there.
So there's room to shake. Shaking is very important when it comes to a margarita.
So it's just flavor.
Yeah, and it actually didn't rip. So the scissors keep me in the hand.
Okay, so while we're doing this, so Christi, I know that you have a favorite. You have at least a couple of favorite Mexican restaurants in Omaha.
Oh yeah,
that you like, that you especially go to for margaritas. Is there a particular one that you would like to shout out?
Favorite is within walking distance of my house in Ralston, and that's Maria's.
Mm-hmm. Oh, of course.
It's the best.
Check it out.
It's Maria's. Yeah, it's a great place. Gets pretty crowded, so be prepared to wait sometimes. Yeah, but it's great food, really great margaritas, and I definitely recommend walking home after having one because they're pretty.
Fun to walk.
Yeah, we can start a new one.
Christi,
oh, that's good. Yeah,
I'm just going to say out loud, and I love you, so don't take this the wrong way. This is a shade of green yellow that is slightly nuclear. That Bach
definitely. I'm not sure if that was Jimmy Buffett's idea or
Bach definitely saw it during his time. This color definitely existed in the real world. Sure. Prost, everybody.
Salud. Salud. Don't want to miss you there.
All right. Oh my god. All right.
See what y'all think.
Okay.
The perfect
Salty.
morning beverage.
Right.
Refreshing.
Yeah, so sorry I forgot the salt for the rim.
It's just when I need sodium and
Smells like something familiar, but I can't. I mean, besides margarita,
kind of like Gatorade.
Gatorade.
Hey, Kool-Aid!
You know?
Yeah.
I could easily see this going into my water bottle my next run.
essential oils or something.
Essential. Oh, nice. So yeah, it's very. That's actually really.
Thank
okay.
you.
Kind of refreshing.
Yes.
That's generous.
Speaking of refreshing, so, this is our largest couch to date, which is awesome, and this is our first time having 3 solos all together. I'm gonna skip around a little bit, but the concerto grosso style of concerto or solo is such a completely different animal than a solo concerto. So my first question is, how did the 3 of you take your individual perspectives on a piece and bring them together into a unit? Because you have to be on the same page for this to work. So how does that start? Like, who's the boss? Is there a boss?
We think she's
It's gracious of them to say, but I view this as a complete collaboration, and it's one of the beauties of a concerto grosso is that for me I don't feel the same pressure as I do when I'm a soloist.
For sure.
It's very chamber music like, and I mean, we'll have to when we work with the full ensemble, there'll be more like, this is how we're doing it, but with the 3 of us we'll come to a cohesive decision making together, I think.
Well, and I look forward to playing this with you. This is our second time, right? Is this the same that we did with?
We did Brandy 4 last time.
Oh, okay. Well, with your experience though, playing Baroque style with Apollo's Fire, I have really set ideas always coming into rehearsal, as I would with orchestra or with solo concerto. But it'll be fun for me to kind of get your feedback about length, about ornamentation, about tempos, and I know a lot of tempos are going to be guided by what you want to do on the keyboard. But just exactly what you said, it's so comforting to play in a group, both because just safety and numbers kind of thing, but also I have the attitude, not that I don't get to make those decisions, but I don't have to make those decisions. So I come to it with clear ideas, knowing that I also have kind of an open book attitude about it, and I'm wanting to hear what my collaborators have to say about it, to see how that fits and how it shapes what I'm going to do with the flute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think flexibility is the key.
Always.
So I'm happy to be taking some cues from my colleagues, and it's going to be fun to put together, I think.
Mm-hmm.
How aware? Obviously, when we're in orchestra, we have the multiple view mindset, right? You have your part where you fit. You know what parts you're supposed to be working with. You have the conductor perspective. You're checking in there. As soloists together, does that add another layer to that viewpoint where it's like you, the group, the orchestra, the collective?
Yes, I would say. I think so.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand exactly what you're asking. Can you ask again in a different way? What?
Yeah. So I find that my favorite concerts are the ones where I can kind of lose myself in a perspective that is not just, here's what my part is doing and here's what's happening. And I know that if I check in with the entirety of the section, or if I check in with the entirety of the low strings, I start to get to that point. So as a soloist, I imagine it would be where you fit in with what you hear around you, and then checking in with, say, the conductor. But now you have the added viewpoint of 2 additional soloists with you. So how often do you get to change your perspective, I guess, while you're performing and check in around you, as opposed to just, am I?
Yeah, I think thank you for explaining that again. I mean, I think in a piece like Brandenburg 5, there is the way he composes it, there is a constant switching from being a solo voice to being accompaniment. So it's much more frequent. It's like all the time it's switching, then like a traditional like Mozart violin concerto, you rarely are the accompanying person. I mean, sometimes you are, but it's mostly you're the melody, right? So that there's a lot more switching going on. I think in this concert, this particular piece, a bigger difference and shift of perspective for the entire ensemble will be the fact that there's not going to be a conductor. Because I don't want to use the word that's in my mouth, but the word is crutch. I mean, there's a crutch, like you have this visual crutch to look at exactly what's going on. And regardless of what you're hearing, you'll be like, oh, I'm just going to play what I see because that's what we're supposed to do. But we're not going to have that kind of, we're not going to have that ability. So what I would hope is that everybody from the bass to me, to the harpsichord, to the, third viola player, that, everybody's going to be listening in a very just sort of chamber music way and checking in with everybody visually, not just, looking for the stick. Right. It'll be, so I think that's going to be a big difference for everybody.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that about the visually, because in the orchestra, you have a little bit of a visual sense of what's going on. I watch bows and I watch conductor and I watch bodies of other wind players. But when it's more intimate like that, I think you're even more keyed into the breath and to the bow and, hands on the keyboard and things like that. As far as the preparation, I think it changed too, because in orchestra, even though we know the repertoire usually that we play really well, I try to go back and listen to it and just remind myself of where I fit in the fabric of the orchestra. But when you're a soloist and you carry a little bit more responsibility for the performance, you do a little bit more score steady and really remind yourself where your voice lines up with the rest of the ensemble and with the other soloists. And listening a lot more, listening to several different performances in different acoustical settings to see, I really need to back out of the way here. I need to make sure that, I'm filling up the sound in this place. And then once we get to rehearsal, you react to what you're hearing on stage, but it's going to rely also on a set of ears probably out in the hall to make sure what I think I'm doing as far as balancing is what's actually happening.
Now, Christi, an orchestral keyboardist you're on your own 90% of the time, right? Like maybe you'll have a fellow cellista, but most of the time it's just you. So how do you, taking yourself out of Bach for a second, how do you read the rest of the orchestra? Have you just had so much experience working with people like Susanna and Maria, or do you have things that you specifically look for, say, besides the podium, to clue into where your part fits?
Sure. Depending on the piece, I may have a lick that goes along with the brass or, along with the winds, and just kind of trying to lock into that. It's a little bit of a challenge sometimes with the piano lid because, sometimes I can't see them. I just kind of depend on the ear and the conductor, watching the conductor. But basically it's just like you're saying, key in with everyone around you.
Do you have a style of orchestra keyboard that you prefer? Like, is harpsichord something that you enjoy, or do you like the big Petrushka solos or the Hedwig solo, right? All these iconic keyboard ones.
All great stuff, all challenging. But probably the place I'm most comfortable maybe is Russian music, with Shostakovich and Stravinsky, Prokofiev. They have such challenging piano parts, and it's just a lot of meaty stuff. So I kind of I gravitate toward those, but I love Bach, of course. And then the celeste stuff I love playing celeste. It's a fun instrument, even though you have to really play a lot harder, play a little louder than piano.
Those keys are tiny.
I like that.
You see, like Russian music, it's like, look at the big.
Oh, well, yeah.
Well, then you get the celeste.
That's a challenge.
I had to sub it at Christmas for 2 seconds and looking at the celeste, just like, what?
It's a toy piano.
It's a toy piano. Okay, I want to close the door. And 2, I want to go back. Oh, thank you, sir. So you love these big Russian composers, but you're equally on the harpsichord. So one question I want to ask for all 3 of you is, what was the first time that you got to play either a Baroque piece or a Baroque instrument? And did you know that it was something that you were going to enjoy, or is it something that, Susanna, this is hard to look at you and ask this question.
I'm just thinking, da, 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 da. Like, I think that was the first one in Suzuki.
And minuet and G right there.
That's right.
Christi, Maria, do you have a memory of like a first Baroque piece? Or?
I went through the 2-part inventions probably in my 3rd or 4th year of piano, like 1980, 1981, something like that. I loved those. So there were some really great pieces in there. So that was one of my favorite things to work on. So I didn't do all 14 of them, but I got through a lot of those.
Yeah, and for me, it was the Bach flute sonatas. There's, a collection of 6, and most flutists within their first 4 years are going to touch on at least, a movement of that. I know that I still don't understand Baroque music, but every time I come to it, it's different. And so I encourage my own students, I tell them we're going to change articulation, we're going to change dynamic, we're going to change so much. Just buy the cheap copy. Like, I never want them necessarily to go out and buy the expensive or text edition or whatever. Just buy whatever is least expensive, because we're going to end up whiting out stuff and changing articulations. And they should have a clean copy that they copy every time they come back to it, because it's going to be different throughout their lives and their careers every time they touch it.
Oh, that's interesting. Because with the cello suites, I have my copy. It's Janos Starker's edition, and it's been beaten to smithereens. I lent it to somebody, and they put it on the floor of their Jeep and stuff like that. So that person has disappeared and never been found. But you look at your fingerings, your old fingerings. You're like, who did this? Who did this to me? This is unacceptable. Do you two find the same, or do you reapproach music every time you see it? Or do you kind of take comfort in the work that's already been done? Is it a little column A, a little column B?
A little of both. And with this Brandenburg Concerto, I actually played this. The first time I played it was for this audition for this job. So that was in 2000. And worked on it a lot and took it to my piano teacher. And she helped me a lot, so much. And I think I even brought it to her when we performed it. The last time we performed it, I studied with her for that. And some of the fingerings, now that I'm looking at it this time, I thought, some of those could change. But I was so glad that most of those were in there, because it really saves a lot of work this time around. Some things have changed, but mostly it's stayed the same.
Nice.
For now.
I'm definitely finding myself starting from scratch more frequently, especially with 18th century music. I've done a lot of learning in the last decade or so, and have been lucky to work with colleagues who are real specialists in performing Baroque stuff. So I find it really helpful to start from a clean part, clean slate, and even with 19th, 20th century music and beyond that I've played before, I have found myself, there's that wonderful moment of liberation when you're realizing that you, even at our age, that you can still change a fingering in a bowing, that you don't have to do the one that your teenage self was told to do by your teacher at that time.
We're the teachers now.
Right. So there is, I still have that moment like, oh, I'm a grown-up. I can make this decision.
It's in pencil. So smart.
Even for Brahms or Dvorak or something. I'm like, I can do that.
I love that you have that reaction, because if I see a bowing that's not the one I'm used to, my inner 5-year-old is like, what?
And I'm glad we're talking about this. As an educator, when my students play Bach, I really try not to tell them what articulation and what dynamics to put in there, but I try to explain why you make certain decisions about, why these 3 notes are slurred, or why this is loud and then it's followed by an echo, and try to give them the premise, and then just listen to what they do with it. And very often I hear things and I think, oh, I never thought of shaping it that way. That's creative. That's interesting. I let them know if it's, too unusual an approach that maybe wouldn't be the correct way to do it as far as we know. But I really enjoy that part of interacting with Baroque music is what somebody else is going to bring to it. And kind of along those lines, as I've matured as a musician and as a person, what I find myself doing is less. My least favorite performances of Baroque music, and I think it's important to listen to those too, because it forces you to ask yourself, why? Why doesn't that work for me? So my least favorite performances are the ones that do too much, that try to impose too much ingenuity onto it. When it's so beautifully written as it is, just play it as it comes. Just let it sing, let it weave its magic. I think at this point in my life, I do a little bit less when it comes to interpretation. I just do what flows out of Bach's music naturally.
I really love that, because we were talking about Mozart just a couple weeks ago, and how, in the 19th, 20th century, those composers just stuffed the page full of instructions, so you can't go a single bar without tripping over something, right? And in Mozart and Bach and these Baroque composers, it's very minimal what's actually on the page, and there's something terrifying and refreshing about that at the exact same time. And even my piano teacher back in the day with Gershwin, she used to like, don't cheese up Gershwin. Everything he wanted you to do is right there. You don't need to add anything. So as you approach this Bach solo, is that part of it, is just taking your, I'm assuming that you're all working from the same edition, or you've coordinated editions. I'm wondering if you're going to find out tomorrow. Okay, that's all right. So you're going to find out what each of you, because obviously with different editions, editors sometimes add. So how do you start with that clean slate with the three of you? Do you play it through first? Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's what we'll do. We have an idea of what tempos are going to work well for Christi. And since she has,
more
like
notes,
50 million notes to our 5 notes, like that ratio, she's the boss. And
We'll see.
I think that's such an organic way to approach it too. Like, I look forward to just getting together and just playing it through and kind of see what happens, and then talking about each of our reactions after we have a playthrough, and what we'd like to prioritize each one of us. And I know just with the friendships that I have with these women, that there's not going to be any butting of heads or egos. It's going to be, if anything, it's like Chip and Dale. No, I said you first, right?
Yeah.
So you've caught us at a moment where we've all been doing individual work, and tomorrow is our first work together, because the harpsichord has been impounded at the Orpheum until now. So we've been waiting to work with the actual instrument we'll be using. So
that's actually a great seg, because Christi, you do not have access to a harpsichord 24/7. Yeah. What does it feel like the first time to go from a piano to a harpsichord? Because I imagine you have been practicing this on piano, obviously, in preparation. Is that kind of like you've been doing weights and suddenly someone takes 50 pounds?
Exactly. It is pretty much like that. And I was hoping that would be the case. The harpsichord was just delivered yesterday. And so I had even played through the piece on the piano before the harpsichord arrived. And then after they left, I sat down and played. And I was like, it's actually so much easier in some ways. But in other ways, it's easier to make a splat mistake on the harpsichord. So you don't have to press down as hard to get a key to sound. So it's easier to
like touch something and boop.
Yeah. It's going to be
sensitive.
So I have to be really precise, a lot more precise.
Do you ever, if you're on a harpsichord solo, do you ever take sabbatical from piano? Is that something you can?
No, I never can. No.
Okay. How about Baroque violin?
So I relate to this more after doing playing on a separate instrument for Baroque for the last 10 years than I would have beforehand. But yeah, so I started working part-time with this Baroque ensemble that all play on historical instruments. Most of them are reproductions of historical instruments. And yeah, I mean, the Baroque violin looks like a violin, but it is so different. It has a shorter neck, slightly wider neck. And the thing that I find the most confounding is that the bridge is lower. So it's great to play double stops, but it means that clarity of string crossings, when I switch between Baroque and modern. Like, I mean, there's a period of several days where I'm hitting open strings like I did when I was 10, you know, and then there's like some brain physical adjustment that happens, and then I switch back to the modern, and it's like, here I go again, you know, sounding like a kid, you know, and so that's tricky. I think those are the biggest switching differences that I find difficult, because the other thing about having a shorter neck, and you know, we hold the instrument at a different angle, so the bow angle gets a little bit out of whack as well. But like my third finger in first position is in a different place. So yeah, the most successful transition I ever made was I think it was during COVID, and I'd done a bunch of Baroque stuff, and then I came back and we were doing Soldier's Tale, and I had to pick up the modern violin and block out, you know, fourths, fifths, thirds, octaves, all in first position on the modern violin, and that got me right back. So that's actually what I do now to swap back, is to just, because I have to just relearn like really basic things, and it just takes a while.
So you just put the devil's dance on your stand.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Let's do it.
And yeah, and the bow is different. One of the most fun things about playing in terms of responsiveness that is maybe similar in a way is that we play on gut strings in historical performance groups, and they respond so differently from a metal string. So that's fun. But then going back and forth can produce its fair share of squeaking until, you know, there's that, okay, I remember how to pull the bow, like what speed works and what speed doesn't work. It just, yeah, it's crazy making, but it's fun.
This is so interesting for me to hear. I mean, this is our profession, and I'm around musicians all the time, but to hear the details about what you do to make those adjustments is really interesting to me. The only instrument thing I have to add, because I don't know what my excuse is, it's the same flute I play all the time, is that this concerto is in D, which was the preferred key for the original instrument of the time. But D, in my opinion, is the least friendly on the modern flute, because of the leading tone C sharp. It's a very volatile. It can be too sharp, it can be too flat. It's just very, very flexible. So I always have to be mindful of where I'm putting that C sharp for it not to be out of tune. And it's all in the middle register. It doesn't float up super high. It doesn't really go down very low. And that's our least friendly register as far as projection and control of the sound. So that's what makes this concerto difficult for me, is just that it wasn't really written to be friendliest to my instrument. So
to the modern flute. Was it originally written for recorder or traverso?
I think traverso.
Okay. Do we know if the traverso's range would not go as high as a modern?
Correct.
Okay, so it's in the sweet spot for the traverso.
Right. And finger pattern. Yeah, because it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And balance would not really be a challenge that would be of major concern with the sounds of the instruments of the period. I think it would project with gut strings being played around you and stuff. I don't think it would be a problem that it's in a lower range. I think it would still be heard.
Got it. So, okay, right, because with a modern flute, if you are in your sweet spot, you cut through beautifully. And harpsichord is not a naturally loud instrument. Although there used to be on YouTube a rite of spring for 13 harpsichords, I think it was. It has since been removed.
Or burned.
All the harpsichords broke.
It just collapsed into. So harpsichord's not a naturally compared to modern pianos, which can decimate an entire orchestra. A harpsichord's not going to do that, and gut strings are similar, that they are not going to project the same way that steel does. Mm-hmm. So when you're in the hall listening to informed performances where you have like a smaller ensemble on stage, you have 3 soloists, and you're in a place like the Jocelyn or in the Holland, how is balance adjusting? Are you taking what they've done in rehearsal to naturally balance themselves and then giving them tweaks in certain spots, like Susanna, in this spot you can come out here, or if Maria can't go up, can you two come down? Is it moments like that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to when you were saying you listen to recordings in different acoustical spaces. That's just kind of where being in the Jocelyn, certain ranges in different instruments, depending on where they are on stage, will kind of, I think, be louder or softer than expected or than rehearsed. And so sometimes you can you can tell what the ideas were, and then you can kind of inform based on that. That maybe it's not coming out in the way that's expected, but it's generally only acoustically that becomes an issue, because sometimes, I mean, you can even tell in it'll be slightly different instrumentation, or for example, the last Jocelyn performance, when we had the Gandolfi and the winds were all on a different side of, or closer to the front of the stage, all of a sudden the projection changes. And then that's where the comments come in.
Got it.
Yeah.
And you did Brandenburg 4 not that long ago with 2 flutes and violin. How did that feel? Do you remember putting that together with Haley? Did you feel like you really had to work hard to project, or because you were forward in that middle
That
part?
was written for a recorder. Brandenburg 4
Okay.
for 2 recorders. I'm pretty sure. So I don't know. That seems to have a higher register. If I'm thinking about it with the arpeggios and stuff.
I'm trying to remember specifics about it. I mean, the only impression that I have in my memory was just how natural it was. That the other flutist and I had played together quite a bit, and similar sounds, kind of coincidentally same teacher, so it was just like hand in glove. It was very natural. I don't remember us having to make any huge adjustments.
I don't remember either.
Yes. But the range would have been helpful for sure.
Got it.
For this performance, we're going to be trying a quite small ensemble. So hopefully we won't have to boost you with a mic. So it's just tricky to get a harpsichord to project over a bunch of modern instruments. So we're just playing with, I think, 4. There's only one tutti violin part in this piece. There's not violin 1 and 2. There's just a violin part. So we're using 4, 3 violas, 2 cellos, and 1 bass. So I'm hopeful that decision will solve 90% of the balance problems.
Well thought through.
So we'll see. We'll find out.
I do love getting to see the orchestra in this configuration, though, in these smaller Baroque ensembles, because it becomes, as we were talking earlier about chamber music, it's an entirely different ballgame. It's such a fun one to be a part of, because you do suddenly feel exposed, like all of the whole idea of like, well, could you just tell me if it's faster, slower, louder, or softer, please? You have to take that away and actually just be 1,000% invested. And so it tends to be
Shaping every bar.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and we always, when we think about these concerti moments and these Baroque moments, Bach is so often the composer that we pick. But I'm genuinely curious for the 4 of you. Is Bach the gold standard for you personally, or is Bach just the most famous Baroque composer? And if you could pick another composer to perform more of from that era, would you pick a different one? It's a loaded question that I did not prepare you for.
There's some good Vivaldi concerti with multiple instruments, but Bach is just so much, I don't know, meatier or something. I don't know how to describe it. The writing is so much more complex with Bach, but Vivaldi's got some beautiful things too. So I wouldn't mind doing some more of that.
From my perspective, I think Bach is really king of instrumental music. I love what I perceive of his mind when I play Bach and study and listen to it. For me, though, I'm a real fan of Purcell. My mother was a beautiful singer, and Purcell is more known for vocal music, I think much more than Bach. Purcell wrote hundreds of songs, and I love those pieces. Maybe because my mother was a singer and it's so much in my ear, listening to vocalists, hearing what vocal teachers and coaches have to say informs my flute playing as much as I think as much as the flute instruction that I've had. My approach to the instrument tries to be very vocal. I think about, my body and resonance spaces in much the same way as a vocalist. So that's why of other Baroque composers, Purcell really stands out to me. Just the beautiful, super expressive, lots of push-pull at the ends of phrases, and simple lines that just express emotion that crosses the centuries, really.
Well, your inspiration from vocalists and singers is, I think, partly why you're such a beautiful flute player. Because it is, I think that's often our goal. It's certainly my goal, to imitate the voice as much as possible. And what drew me to the violin, I started on piano, but I just felt, I started on violin 3 years later, and it just seemed like the avatar for the voice that I wasn't given, I mean, I did do also did some singing, but I never developed a voice, right? Mm-hmm. But I love it. Back to repertoire. Mm-hmm. If I had to pick a Baroque composer to take with me to a desert island, it would be Bach. No question. There's just so much depth in all of that music, all of his music. I think it would keep my brain and my heart pretty happy. But if I, didn't have to pick in that dire circumstance, I would love for the Omaha Symphony to play more a variety of Baroque composers, and we have some plans in the works. I think that's going to be happening. Vivaldi is so much fun to play. He wrote so many things, most of them pretty good. And he's like the rock and roll star of the Baroque era. I think his actually the way he writes, the harmonic sequences that he uses are very similar to popular rock songs, which I think is why people gravitate to his music. They're these repeating riffs and it's not as nearly as contrapuntal and involved with every line being melodic and whatever. It's he's just thinking of it differently, but it's really fun. But there's also wonderful music by Telemann and Corelli and Handel, which our orchestra would play very well given a chance. Those pieces, I find Handel and Telemann need as much sculpting and crafting and rehearsal as Bach. I mean, it really takes time. There's a lot going on, and it's not always the most emotionally quick and accessible kindling that Vivaldi has. So, but there's wonderful. Telemann has beautiful concertos for multiple instruments. We should do one. Okay. There's a nice one for flute, cello, violin, and something else. Anyway.
So I'm really glad to hear that variety is maybe in the works, in the planning process, because, you were talking about how it changes when it's just the small ensemble. Isn't that the great thing about the Jocelyn series, that we so often do these much smaller pared down things at the super contemporary end, at the, the cabaret style, and then this Baroque stuff. So it's one of I think the great things about what we get to do with the Omaha Symphony is that we have this chamber series pairing with the Jocelyn, and we get to do this colorful, varied repertoire.
I'm curious if you can provide some insight when you are working without a conductor for the rehearsal process. Are any of the parts prepared in advance with like you say, phrasing every bar and all that stuff? Do the section leaders do that? Is there coordination beforehand? Are you kind of giving prepared parts?
That has been my approach for this project. I've prepared the parts and put in, more phrasing and shaping and articulation and instruction than we would typically see in a part that was presented to us. So I have found that to be helpful for music that the orchestra doesn't play as frequently. We don't do as much Baroque music yet at this point. So yeah, I've put in a lot of markings.
Is that kind of a Baroque ensemble tradition? Is that you have that centralized voice, and even if it's not a conducting voice, just like it's a starting roadmap for everybody?
Well, it has been my experience. I haven't only really played in one other group in Apollo's Fire. But yes, the parts are really significantly marked with the conductor's ideas. And it's a great starting place. It's not that we play that and then we're done. I mean, there's like plenty to work on, but it does help. Although I might have put in some more shaping than would have been in a group that plays this all the time, and would just have a sort of a fluency.
Well, yeah,
in how to play like a continual line.
Right, and
there'd be less discussion about that.
There's also a lot of when you get into that middle period, right, where you have so much unison playing, where like the low strings are playing this line, the winds are playing this line, the upper strings are playing this line. Thomas Wilkins used to talk about staying in your lane all the time, and because he loved his football metaphors, right? But he was so often, though, he was talking about composers like Mahler or Strauss, where you have very
stratified. Yeah. Are you accompaniment? Are you counter melody? Are you melody? What's your role?
And even then, it's like you could have a moment in a Strauss tone poem where everyone else is playing triple forte and you're supposed to be playing piano or mezzo piano, and it's so tempting to meet everybody else where they are. And I don't get it's not that I don't get the stay in your lane approach for Baroque music, but it's a much more, well, I was talking earlier about perspective. It's like, yes, I have my lane, but I'm very much influenced by what you are doing over there. So even if I have piano, I still am making these like tiny motions just to keep bolstering up.
Yeah, and I mean, well, I think whether it's Baroque or a piece that was written yesterday, it's always super helpful and desired for the ensemble to be led by the bass. I mean, like really, directed, the phrasing being directed from the bottom. I mean, the continuo has the shaping of the phrase, has the knowledge, the core of what's happening harmonically. So yes, always shaping.
So Christi, in this Brandenburg concerto, you have so many notes, so much perpetual motion. Do you consider, is it solo continuo at the same time, or are you separate enough from the continuo parts that you can let them do their thing? How does this feel for you as you're putting it together?
Well, just different parts are with continuo, and then there's the part where it just kind of goes off on its own. But it also has, the chords filled out with the harpsichord. So it's like I'm accompanying myself a little bit there.
Well, so you two were talking earlier, like you get to trade when you are melody and accompaniment. So you get to do that all by yourself.
Yeah.
It's fun.
So how do you separate that? This is a really dumb question. It's potentially a very dumb question. Because with piano, it's like accompaniment, melody. Most when you're first starting off, does it feel like that, or is it a much more varied, subtle thing? Every measure is different, every line is different,
or every section, different, goes into one section where, the piano music too can do that too, where I've got accompaniment in the right hand and I'm doing some little melody in the left hand, and it's just all over the place sometimes. So I've just kind of gotten used to being ready for anything.
Dividing and conquering. Your two hands are split into two different brains.
Yeah, it's always.
What do you look forward to the most when you get to approach a project like this? Like, when you see this on the schedule, or when we call you and say, we'd like to do Brandenburg 5, like what's the first thing that gets you going?
for sure the high level of playing of my colleagues, the utter confidence that I have in them as musicians, as artists, as people. That was the biggest draw, I think, for me. And then just that chamber music aspect, that something so pared down and so intimate, where I don't have the attitude, I don't get to make the decisions. It's that I don't have to. You just kind of, while still maintaining your voice and your ideas, float through it. You get to experience it. You don't have to drive it. You don't have to do anything special. I guess it kind of loops back to, my attitude about Baroque music in general right now. Just that I'm able to relax into it and participate and just enjoy being in the moment. And with these guys, I can't think of anything more fun, really.
When we were talking to Lisa, she talked about how she had experienced playing traverso and how sometimes she would choose to, when she was playing it on the flute, try to emulate the sound of the traverso. Have you experimented with that? Is that something you...
Very little. Maybe, 10, 15 years ago, I might have done more to try to sound more like a traverso. But, again, I keep coming back to less is more, because I think sometimes when we do too much to eliminate vibrato, which happens naturally. I mean, I ease the vibrato for sure, but to eliminate it altogether, or to do too much timbral trills, right? Where this will be hard to explain to people that don't understand it, but you can press keys and it's the same note, but it has a different color. That's a very traverso kind of sound. But I think if it's overdone on the modern instrument, then it starts to seem kitschy and trite. And so there's a couple places where I've got held notes that are ascending, and as they ascend, you add a little bit of that timbral trill, then you add a vibrato, then you add an actual trill. So I guess my use of listening to traverso and appreciating what the traverso can do is informative but limited in my current interpretation.
Do you have performers over the years that you go back to their recordings again and again? Do you have people that you just love listening to as you prepare these things or prepare the style?
I have a couple. Yeah. Bertold Koiken is a great traverso player. I like Jacques Zun because his instrument is modern, but it's wooden. And for me, and he's a fantastic player, both orchestrally and chamber music. So to hear that, to hear him play, his approach to the instrument kind of is the bridge, because it's a wooden instrument and keyed at the same time. So.
And Christi, you said I'm going to come back to that.
That's right.
You said you brought this to your teacher multiple times. So your teacher, you must have felt very much like this voice was someone who was steering you in the right direction.
Yes, and she was not a Baroque teacher. She was my main piano professor in college, but she was just so knowledgeable and so musical that I trusted anything she said. And she had some just great things that I look at it now. I'm like, yeah, she was so right about that. So many things. I mean, I say that about her all the time, not just with this piece.
And her name is?
Janine Morrison. She lives in Atlanta.
She obviously did a great job.
She's fantastic.
I learned so much from listening. And I don't know what I did before YouTube. I don't know what I did, because I went
to the library.
I guess that's what I did. But I mean, oh my gosh, I love going down the rabbit holes. I really enjoy the artistry of. There's a Baroque violinist named Shunsuke Sato. He was the leader of the Netherlands Bach Society, and he's just brilliant and. Not just as a violinist, but as a conductor, leader, thinker of the music, especially Bach. So I really enjoy him, and I think I also enjoy Rachel Podger very much and Monica Huggett. I'm and even sort of out of left field decisions from people like Fabio Biondi and stuff like that. Like I'm so entertained by listening to pieces that I am very familiar with and then feeling by somebody else's interpretation that I've just landed on, planet Zon. And I'm like, what's happening? Like, this is really wild. Yes. I mean, I find that very exciting and stimulating to listen to just different perspectives like that.
Yeah. And I love that because I feel like there was definitely a time period where people just used Baroque music as like elevator muzak, right? It's just like Mozart for babies but oh man, when it's played well and it's people have their whole heart into it, it's like my husband loves to find, it'll be Christmas time and we'll be on YouTube watching Bach Christmas oratorios, and it's the whole 3-hour thing is on YouTube and we're going to watch the entirety of it because you can't stop watching. The level of engagement that has to be a part of these performances is so huge from everybody. And I'm that leads me to my next question, which was also not on the outline. But period practice is this huge rabbit hole that I don't necessarily want to dive down right now. But in 2025, what is important about Bach and about this music that you can bring to the table at the Jocelyn versus going down the deep dive of period practice? Like, no, we have to play it like Bach would do in Bach's time. So what do we think about in 2025 when we approach this piece?
I think that's a great question and something I think a lot about, just like what you were saying, when you see these performances that make you go, what? It brings it to life. And when it's done well, it breathes life into these pieces, and it's like literal time travel, right? You get to really understand that the people that wrote this and the people that originally played it were living, breathing, laughing human beings. And it takes Baroque music out from behind the glass a little bit and lets you hold it in your hand and enjoy it. And how do you access that as a performer? I think it loops back to what we were talking about earlier, just like being present with it, breathing, not overthinking it, not overdoing what's, available to you as far as ornamentation and interpretation and stuff, but just be present, listen to what's going on around you, watch what's going on around you, really, really be in the moment, but let it breathe, let it have its life, because that's the way we take it and make it our own, rather than just some sort of embossing that we do, on a historic document. It lets us live it, and I know these guys can do it, and I know our orchestra can do it. So I look forward to it.
One of the things that attracted me to my individual journey into historical performance about 10, 12 years ago was having felt for the first half of my career that when we were playing 18th century and earlier music, or even early 19th century music like Mendelssohn and Schubert, that the approach for a while seemed that I was experiencing was that this is precious, right? It was like the behind the glass, this is precious, this is perfect. There's something a little bit aloof about it. We're just going to play it as perfectly as possible and whatever. So I just had this niggling discontent that this was not, that there's more to the story. And I mean, all music is vibrant. All music is passionate. Even though we have the sounds of the 21st century in our ears, the people living in the 18th century and earlier had very different sounds, and the tools that they had harmonically and with like vocal leaps and dissonances and stuff, like these were profound emotion producing gestures. So I mean, the music is just super alive, and I think that's what we can bring to it when we play it at the Jocelyn. Like just play it with verve and commitment. I will ask that the tutti ensemble doesn't use vibrato or sustain and things like that, so that there's historically informed decisions that we will make, but we're going to play on the instruments that we have, and I think yeah, if we play it with commitment, it's going to be great. I'm just not, I can't do the, Karajan Stokowski sustained strings like a 1980s synthesizer. That won't happen on my watch. But, everything else,
It's like we're going to make a choice with a capital C.
Not that there's a bit like that in.
No, oh yeah, that makes me so happy. It is true. I love to remember that these composers were churning out week after week after week this incredible amount of music, and sometimes it was for, like in Vivaldi's case, it's like I have all these girls at this conservatory who need to share this, and they need to play them now.
Gotta keep them busy.
And Bach's like, I got a cantata.
And if they catch a suitor's eye when they are playing a solo, even better. That was part of it. It was the, hey, look at me.
Okay.
It was they were all trying to get.
Competency is very sexy. Just gonna say.
Always.
And in Bach's case, just like a cantata plus a week, just having and not taking it from behind the glass is such a great way of describing it. It's like, no, this is not something that you just get to tuck away at a museum. This is very much a living and breathing art form.
It's not a Sudoku puzzle, right? It's art.
And I mean, the middle movement of Brandenburg 5, which is for just the three of us, is affettuoso. It's a rhetorical, it's a conversation, it's rhetoric. We're having a very emotional and impassioned conversation, and there are leaps that would take time if we were singing, and so we'll try to make it as rhetorical as possible.
I love that. I think like even when I was learning the flute, my teacher was her education was based on the time before we kind of understood performance practice. So that kind of Karajan, the sustain and all was kind of what she experienced. Mm-hmm. And so she, of course, then could only teach kind of the things that she knew as well. And so this kind of, all this creativity, I think is relatively recent, probably last 25 years or so, 30 years, where we started to kind of more in the musicology side, learn about this and then perform this, and then with the internet have on YouTube. And so, for the rest of us all to be inspired by it. And I just love how much creativity in terms of your own phrasing that you're giving already to the orchestra and all the other decisions, and how you'll come together in the rehearsal tomorrow to, experiment more. I love that. And I love that with that, you're all going to share that with the audience.
Access wise, there's has been no better time to find and seek out musicians that you never thought you would get to hear, or things that you'd never thought you would get to hear. Yes, the YouTube. Thank you, YouTube, and the rabbit holes it has allowed. Speaking of museums and behind glass, so we're almost done, and we're so grateful that you came in today, and we absolutely cannot wait to hear Bach next week. But my question for you right now is, if you were at the National Museum of, I had this written down, National Music Museum in Vermillion, South Dakota.
I've been there.
Yes, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And there were all the Baroque instruments or Renaissance instruments laid out for you to try. And you had 30 minutes of no consequences where you could pick and go to town. What instrument are you trying?
I would try all the keyboard instruments, of course.
That's cheating, Chrissy.
It'd be so fun. Well, I would
just have this image of her going through the river.
Very Bugs Bunny as a piper Trish on
the clavichord or whatever, and spin it.
Yeah, all of those. 30 minutes, there's time, right?
Yeah, there's plenty of time.
They have a vast flute collection, but they have some particularly old Native American flutes, which I would love to play. I'm really drawn to how old those instruments are, which is a little bit more rare, I think, in the wind world than it would be like in the string world, because there's something really precious to bringing to life an instrument that's been around that long, that that shared someone else's breath passing through it to create music. Just the way the instrument itself would get to open up and sing again. Again, there I go with like the time travel and kind of over romanticizing things, but I would feel a real privilege to get to blow through and share some time with a really old Native American flute.
I have two things that are not simpatico with each other. Can I say both of them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, the first,
You can do what you want. You're the teacher.
You're the adult now.
my wishes are not necessarily grown up though, because part of what I want to do is spring all of the Amadis that they have from jail and take them out from behind the glass and be like, here world, let's hear them, let's restore them, let's play them. I actually there's always something I find quite bittersweet about seeing these amazing old violins, Strads, Guarneri, Amadis. They have a beautiful collection of Amadis. They have like a whole quartet of them, I think, there, that are behind the glass. Like it just feels, I don't know, like there's something sad because they've been silenced at some point. So I would like to spring them from jail. But then personally, I would like to try one of those crazy looking violins with like the trumpet. Like, there's that on the second floor. I don't know where it is. There's like a place and they have like they're folk instruments and there's like violins with like almost like a I don't know, some big conical brass trumpety thing coming out of it.
It has for radio or recording so that it would be as directional as possible.
Anyway, I'd be very curious about playing around with those.
Absolutely.
Just having a field day, being your own Sousa band, like contained within yourself.
Then we have to play the calliope. Then we have to play the gamelan. Then we have you really.
Vermillion, we're coming.
They're gonna like bar the door.
Susanna's just sneaking by. No one wants
Nothing to see here.
Susanna's going in with Kat carrying cakes.
I think that's a great place to call it. Susanna and her Amadis and the cat carriers. Thank you all. Thank you all so much. Brandenburg 5 on Sunday, I want to say Sunday, May 18th at 2 p.m. at the Jocelyn. Susanna, Maria, Christi, you guys are the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
That was so good. They're always so good, but that was so good. Thank you.